Alright, so you guys might be wondering why I'm redoing my SGDQ submission for Battle for Bikini Bottom many percent. That is because a huge time save was found in this game just a few days ago. And it was theorized for 4 to 5 years. The community is very excited about it, so I wanted to make a new video just showing the trick off. I'm going to start out with some basics on this game. It was developed by Heavy Iron Studios, published by THQ in 2003. Licensed by Nickelodeon with the SpongeBob brand. Unlike most licensed games though, this game utilizes the SpongeBob brand very well, and it creates a very convincing and entertaining world that feels like you're actually a part of the show. It's a very well-made Bikini Bottom. So I definitely recommend it to any of you who haven't played it before. Casually it holds up. Even today, it's aged very well. This taxi entrance thing I'm doing here is actually a glitch I'm going to use to disable the game's out-of-bounds detection so I can run around in areas where I'm not supposed to be. All I'm doing here is leaving the area with this hand on the screen, and that activates the glitch. Okay. So we're headed over to Bungee now. This is a out-of-bounds skip, and we're going to use it to skip half the level. This is the first example of spatula warp abuse. We're going to collect a golden spatula in this ditch over here. And by collecting this spatula and drowning, we can skip the spatula animation and skip to Bungee, which is where you would obtain the warp for the spatula challenge. Because we obtained the spatula before getting the challenge, it unlocks the spatula in the main menu, despite not having collected the challenge already. So we can just skip through half the level for doing that. Golden spatulas serve as the game's main form of currency. They're used much like moons are in Mario Odyssey, stars in Mario 64. We use them to advance through levels and eventually get to the final boss fight and win the game. Alright, that was a frame-perfect exploit called Hammer Skip. All that exploit does is utilizes AI manipulation, which is just getting the robot to stand in the spot where I want it to, and then a frame-perfect damage boost to launch myself on top of the cliff. Frame-perfect damage boost in this game pretty much just work like this. You have one frame between SpongeBob's damage animation and his falling animation where you can press any grounded move, such as the Bubble Bash, which is the Viking move, the Viking helmet move, or jumping, which is the A move, when I press A and jump. You can also use bowling in midair, but it's not useful in the run. I'm going to skip this cutscene here by dying after I activate the cutscene trigger. That becomes pretty useful later on. But yes, this game runs in 60 FPS, so these frame-perfect jumps are not easy to perform at all. Especially consistently. What I just did there was a Viking move in midair. However, I slid off a ledge, so I obtained more frames to press the button on. So I'll explain a little bit better now, since this part has a little bit of downtime. Frame-perfect moves in this game are 1/60th of a second precision, and you activate them by pressing the A button or Y button between the animation when SpongeBob's hurt and when he's falling. And there are 5 different cycles for that, so there are 5 different animations you have to react to be able to time it properly, consistently. However, if you slide off a ledge, the game detects you on the ground for more frames, so you get extra frames to press whatever button you choose. So that second skip there was not frame perfect in Jellyfish Fields, the one with the Viking bash. In that situation, we were able to get more frames, which doesn't mean it's easier. It's even harder, actually, in my opinion, than a lot of frame perfect jumps in this game. It's very inconsistent. A lot of the tricks are in this game very difficult to pull off. So you might have noticed I've been collecting these shiny objects, and that's literally what they're called in this game. They're called shiny objects. The game's smallest form of currency that we use to purchase toll gates, golden spatulas, and new areas. Just serve as, like, I guess coins would in some games. They're just called shiny objects. Another form of currency in this game is just socks. We use socks to trade them in for spatulas in the hub world. Trade 10 socks for 1 spatula. And to finish the game, we need 75 spatulas to enter the final boss fight, out of 100 spatulas total. In the 100% speedrun, we collect all 100. But in any percent, we only collect 75 to get into the final boss, and finish the run with 77 because the final boss has 2 phases, each giving us 1 spatula. So the total is 77%. You might be noticing that I'm getting this combo on the bottom of my screen. The combo just describes how many objects you hit in succession and then rewards you based on how many objects you hit together. So if I hit a lot of tikis together, that gives me more shiny objects for a bonus. Downtown is a pretty linear level, especially the streets. However, with these exploits, by jumping on these poorly designed enemies, I can just hop over these gates and barriers and run right through the level. So yes, a lot of what I just did there was unintended. It's kind of hard to go over all of it because this game is so incredibly broken, but I'm sure anybody who played this game casually can tell that a lot of what I just did there was not intended. So here's an example of a toll gate we have to pay to enter the Sea Needle for the Extreme Bungee Challenge. This is one of the more movement-intensive areas of the run, actually. It's kind of hard to tell, because it's not your traditional platforming here. In this area, we have to hit these tikis that are floating below the Sea Needle. There are 3 different bungee areas we have to use, and they all run on the same cycle, so missing 1 tiki sets off the entire cycle and causes a lot of time loss. We also have to be careful not to blow ourselves up on the thunder tikis. Those are the ones that were exploding earlier. Yeah, so if we hit these tikis that are holding up the other tikis, the tikis on top of them will fall to the ground and become destroyed. So we don't have to literally hit all of them. We just have to make sure that they're all destroyed, whether they fall to the ground or we hit them physically. There we go. Brushing against the thunder tiki causes it to activate its explosion, by the way. After a few seconds, it'll detonate. Good. So we use that to exploit the thunder tikis and just kind of brush past them. Hit other tikis while they're blowing up. Now we're going to switch to Sandy. I'm going to explain some differences between Sandy and SpongeBob. Sandy has some limitations, but she also has much greater platforming abilities than SpongeBob, at least in early game and in the casual game. So you might notice now that she has a 3rd jump, which functions as a hover or a glide. She can float above the map for a limited time, and she can also latch onto these Texas swingers here. So what I just did there was an exploit to skip the entire tutorial level for Sandy. Her tutorial level just shows you how to lasso things and swing on stuff. It's not really necessary in a speedrun, so we can just skip all of it. I'm also collecting those wheels you might have noticed as well. We can trade in 11 wheels for 1 golden spatula, and there are a lot of levels in this game that had those kind of smaller items that you can trade in for stuff. Downtown Rooftops is one of the most movement-intensive segments of the game, believe it or not. Especially in early game, this has very cool movement for an early game segment. Typically, in this speedrun, the tricks follow a pattern where the tricks in the beginning of the game are a lot more setup-based and precise and slow-paced. And the second half of the game, all the tricks are more movement-based and fast-paced. So I believe this speedrun has a very good balance for what people like in speed games, and has a very nice pace to it as well, where it starts off kind of slow and it picks up speed as you go. But we'll explain some of the glitches that allow these things to happen later. So I'm going to collect some wheels, make sure we're on cycle. Platform should rise up. See, that claim we just jumped over is usually paid to get the spatula that we obtained upon entering rooftops. but we were able to skip it because we bypassed an invisible little barrier earlier to get that spatula. I also just exploited the collision on that tartar sauce robot to jump on top of this ledge and skip half of the downtown rooftops as well. You'll notice that a lot of areas where you can ledge grab or when there's poor hit detection, those types of things can be used to skip a lot of areas in this game. That was just a little bit of AI manipulation there. I can encourage that Chuck to fire the missile away from me just by slightly turning my analog stick to the right or left. It's very subtle because this game has very finicky and precise movement. Typically when you watch a new runner of this game, they'll have a lot of difficulty running in a straight line just because the controls are so finicky. But, you know, as you get better at walking in straight lines in this game. One of the bigger challenges of this game is that the control stick for the Xbox does not have notches on it, so it's kind of difficult to set up certain tricks, and especially walking around when SpongeBob's movement is so sensitive. It makes it kind of difficult to accomplish that. But it feels really good though because the game is so responsive to your movement. So earlier I clipped into that glass. I said glass because I'm thinking of the skip that's coming up later. The new one. That's electric. Okay, so I clipped into the electric gate to get the wheel early, so I wouldn't have to walk all the way across the lighthouse to get it again. So it just saves a little bit of time. But yes, there is a skip later that involves clipping into a glass case, and no, it's not Gelato Beach skip, but oh, that was interesting. Yeah, so nope, it's not Gelato Beach skip, but the rolling ballroom clip. And I'll show that to you guys later. You might have noticed that I entered downtown kind of strangely when I jumped over the taxi pad. Well, doing that over here also saves a little bit of time as well. Both of them save 1 second around. And what it does is skips the number disappearing on top of the taxi pad that says you need this many spatulas to get into this area. So it just skips that cutscene, or at least part of it. What I'm doing here is an out-of-bounds trick to skip a cutscene trigger on the left there for introducing a new robot. Also saves a second, but saving a second there is a little bit risky because you can reactivate the hand and disable your out-of-bounds trick that we activated earlier with the taxi pad in Jellyfish Fields. So it is a little bit risky, but it's still worth doing for 1 second. Every second in this game counts. Just did another frame-perfect jump there to get on top of the tower. Now I'm going to show you Sponge Glide, hopefully. Yeah, that was a pretty poor setup. Alright, so this is called Sponge Glide, and what we're doing here is using a damage boost to push ourselves against the tower, get stuck, and levitate all the way across the end of the level. So we just skipped the entire level, and we're gonna now use a damage boost exploit. We're gonna slide off the ledge, use those extra frames to get across. Again, sliding off another ledge here. This setup makes it non-frame perfect, so it makes it a lot more consistent, and we're gonna now glide into the loading zone that would typically be used to backtrack into the end of the level, but since we haven't been there yet, we're just skipping the whole thing. So now we're going to play Goo Lagoon from the back to the front, which is a lot faster. A lot of the objectives are toward the end of the level, so we can just get them very quickly. This level is RNG based here. The robot spawns can sometimes be in pretty bad spots that lose you some time. So in that situation I got some bad spawns, but it's alright, it's not a big deal in a marathon run. In a personal best attempt though, every second counts. Alright, now we're going to do tower climb. This is one of those areas where if you remember playing the game casually, you might think to yourself, there are a lot of areas in this game where we have to pay clams, and it's very grindy for shiny objects. Well, this is an example of how we skip a clam. Wow. I'm very surprised that took 3 tries to get, but that is a very precise ledge grab, to be fair. So that ledge grab allowed us to skip paying a clam, which is very expensive, and collect a spatula from that bungee challenge without having to drop the trampoline. Saves quite a bit of time and makes the game a lot less grindy. We're going to skip another cutscene here by dying after activating it. But yeah, a lot of people who play this game casually would probably expect this game to have a very grindy speedrun because of all the shiny objects you need to get through these levels. But fortunately that isn't the case because it's so busted. We can just skip a lot of this stuff. Now we're going to play this level backward. So every level in this game has a teleport box system, at least the platforming levels do. Where if you open one teleport box in the beginning of the map and then you complete the level, you get to the end, you open the second one, you can jump between them to hop from the beginning to the end of the levels. But this is the second box here, and this is the first box. So by opening the second box first, since we enter the level through the back, the game automatically assumes that we opened the first one already, so we can just use that exploit to skip a lot of levels in this game. Teleport boxes can be abused like that, especially in 100%, they're abused a lot. Yeah, this is one of the major routing differences that has come along since the last time this game was in SGDQ. The early tower spatula. We used to get that later in the game, but now we can get it earlier with damage boosts. The reason why that's important is because it opens up the sock route to collect more socks in late game when they're faster to collect. So it gives you a lot more freedom in routing. Yeah, the world record has dropped from 59.28 to 57.11 since the last time this was featured in a GDQ. And the potential of this game is halfway to a 55. Around 56.30 is probably possible right now with this new skip that was found that saves around 15 to 20 seconds. So, this was only discovered a few days ago. I was fortunately able to beat my own time today. I improved the world record by 5 seconds with this new skip. And I'm going to keep going to try and improve it to a mid-56 level. But it's going to be quite a grind. This game has a lot of tricks that are very difficult to master and get consistently in speedruns. Now this boss is pretty much rinse and repeat. I'm using AI manipulation to make it touch these triggers that make it do the bungee cord move quickly instead of having to run over to me. Just know that it's a highly optimized boss fight. It's very difficult to mess up, so definitely one of those spots where we could read off donations if people have any to read. It's only a few minutes long, so it's not that big of a deal. So I guess I can just talk about some of the more current happenings of the community right now. This game was actually recently, it broke 200 runners on speedrun.com, which is pretty big for us considering, you know, only 2 years ago this game only had 17 runners on the leaderboards. It really has blown up a lot since then. It's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of new players have found a lot of cool skips and tricks, a lot of minor optimizations. But yeah, speaking of which, this trick, the rolling ballroom clip that I'm doing this run to show off, is actually the biggest routing difference in time save since 2016, which is pretty incredible. This game's been speedrun since 2010. We have some documentation dating all the way back to then, with people finding the first hand disable glitch and some, ways of applying it. So it's pretty crazy to see how far this game's gone in 8 years. And it's finally reaching the spotlight for how good of a game it is. But coming up after this segment, we have some boss fights. We have some arena fights, or combat challenges, rather, after this boss fight. Then we have a nice frame-perfect damage boost tacked right in the middle between the two. So, pretty difficult segment. Somewhat RNG dependent. Highly reaction-based. And the frame perfect jump in the middle just makes it all the more difficult to pass the segment in a personal best attempt. Yes, but I was actually able to improve my own world record earlier today before I got on to make this video. And it's constantly improving. I'm constantly playing this game. Try to make time to grind it every day. Alright, so now we're going to head into the tree dome for another combat challenge. These spawns are highly reaction based because they spawn randomly. I have a different set path for all the possible spawns, and somehow that did not get destroyed. Interesting. Where is... okay. I don't understand where this guy went. Because I somehow missed the Duplicatotron. It's a pretty unusual happening in this game. Duplicatotrons spawn more shiny objects. Excuse me, they spawn more robots. So what happens is, like, if you miss that, yes, you lose a lot of time. However, it gives you more shiny objects from the robots you destroy. So it'll make up for itself later a little bit, but it's still a pretty big time loss. That was another one of those frame perfect damage boosts. I had to react to the hit stun cycle that was given to me and jump on the one frame to get across. And that just effectively skipped an entire section of the hub world. So now we're going to get into the third area with all the tier 3 most difficult stages. Fortunately for us, we can complete a lot of the levels in SpongeBob's Dream without the cruise bubble attack, which is unlocked for being the second boss fight. We can just use the Bubble Bowl attack, which we just unlocked for defeating Robo Sandy in SpongeBob's Dream, to get a bunch of the spatulas, and then we can backtrack later for the rest of them. With some pretty fast-paced and difficult tricks. Alright, so now we're headed into SpongeBob's Dream. This is considered to be one of the more difficult, if not the most difficult level in the entire game, because of the high skill ceiling for its tricks, how crazy they are in the first part and the second part. So this is the first part. Has some pretty difficult tricks. One frame perfect trick in this route, actually. It has the potential for 2 to 3, but those tricks are definitely not marathon safe. So that's called Super Bounce Skip, and that, again, allows us to skip another paid clam to bring some trampolines down. We can just jump straight to the box because it has horrible hit detection. Now we're going to go for that frame perfect jump I was talking about. Alright, there we go. That's actually one of the fastest spatulas in the game. All you do is bowl, get the one frame jump, and jump to the spatula and grab it. Here's an example of another slide setup to get more frames. There is a frame perfect setup for this, but it's definitely not marathon safe, as missing the one frame costs 25 seconds per miss. So sliding across the ledge gives us some more frames, and we can easily just press Y with a very big window and get that every time. I say that casually, but that is definitely one of the more difficult tricks to master in this run. It's a noob slayer. A lot of the new players have trouble getting used to it. What we just did there is skip the entire dream level and go straight to the end. Skips a lot of toll gates and stuff like that. And it saves a lot of time. Obviously. So now we're going to go into the Mermalair. This section has a lot of puzzle games that are pretty casual, but nonetheless, there's still some interesting tricks in here. Alright, so there was potential for a 1-frame jump there, however I missed it. The good thing is, though, that that one doesn't punish us for 25 seconds per miss. 15 to 25 seconds like most of the 1-frame jumps in this game. That one only punishes for 2 seconds. And a 2-second loss isn't going to destroy a run most of the time. Depends, though. Alright, so we're headed into the Patrick throwing fruit sections. I'm going to wait on this platform, then I'm going to do a bubble ball boost to push myself a little bit farther down this area. Just a little bit of a speed boost. That speed varies based on how close to the first frame you get when you land on that platform. Bowling on the first frame increases your speed dramatically. And the closer you are to the first frame, the faster you go. But yeah, this level is a lot more execution-based and reaction-based. There are some small differences in some of these levels with the robot spawns, and sometimes the ledges you jump on are inconsistent. This is an example of a clam we have to pay in the speedrun. It's pretty expensive, so we stockpile a lot of shiny objects to pay for it. Keeping track of currency in this game is extremely important. Being low on shiny objects when you have to enter an area is very bad, because then you have to grind for them. Being an optimized player, that doesn't happen to me very often, though. And especially in this run where that bowling shot in the tree dome missed by just an inch or so. I got some extra shiny objects from that. So it shouldn't be too big of an issue in this particular run. Yeah, this puzzle is solved by hitting all of these towers once to get all the nodes to point into the center of the area. They all point toward the melon. I knew a lot of friends who had trouble with that when I was younger. We all played this game when we were kids. But all you gotta do is just hit them all once. The order doesn't matter. And so what I just did there was just a momentum storage glitch that glitch just let me skip to the entire... It skips to the entire Mermalair and gets to the end with the boss fight, but we're going to revisit that later. That boss fight is going to be saved for when we have the cruise boost exploit. I'll explain that in a bit. Alright, that's a really inconsistent ledge. Yeah, what we just did there is skip the entire security tunnel, and as I was saying before, I got a 1-frame bubble ball boost off of that Tiki, which is pretty rare. Really precise trick. Yeah, that was really fast. But yeah, we're going to be back here later as well. The cool thing about this game is that just walking past things and skipping them, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can just not finish the run without doing them. This game doesn't really work like Mario 64 where you can just use a glitch to skip to the final boss without collecting any stars. In this game, the triggers that open the boss fights are only activated when you have the certain number. So it's just hard-coded in that you need 75 spatulas to get to the end of the game. So what we do is we come back later with more momentum exploits and make the backtracking a lot more interesting and faster. I come back with the cruise bubble. So the backtracking in this game is quite fun to watch. It's very fast-paced, and it's necessary to beat the game. That's part of the reason why we skip the entire second area and then backtrack to it later. It's because it's faster to do the first part of SpongeBob's dream without the cruise bubble. So our objective is to get 40 spatulas to enter the second boss fight so we can unlock the cruise bubble. So it's pretty much just the 40 fastest spatulas you can get, and then get the rest of them with the cruise boost. That's why routing in this game has so many possibilities, though. This game has a lot of unique routes to it. I haven't seen one person who runs this game have the same route as another person. There are a lot of different choices you can make. People collect their own socks, they do their own spatulas at their own pace, they pick their own tricks. There are several different ways of doing a lot of tricks, and a lot of them are, you know, like a lot of times you'll have like a frame perfect alternative for a trick that's pretty easy otherwise, just to save a little bit more time. It's really cool to see how people route their own games when they run this game. Unlike a lot of games that are mostly linear, or had most of their tricks pretty much like laid out without any other options for them, or setups. So you may have noticed that we had to pay a lot of shiny objects to get into that toll gate earlier. Well, it's alright, because Sand Mountain gives us a lot of shiny objects back for destroying those tikis. So yes, I was hurting myself purposefully. That was because I need to get more shiny objects to pay for stuff later. And combos give us those. Sand Mountain's all about the combos. You have to hit your combos to get a lot of extra shiny objects. That was just a pretty precise spin there to hit the button before the Duplicatotron blew up on me. Somewhat precise trick. Yeah, once we hit 40 spatulas, we're gonna go to the industrial park and fight Robo Patrick. And it's all downhill from there. It's all downward slope. The game just gets faster and faster after that. Cruise boosting is a very broken exploit. Makes the game very fast. Here's a tech called swing stalling. That might have been way too low. Alright, that was an interesting recovery. Okay. I almost fell off there. But yeah, that's called swing stalling. I didn't do it very well, but I was the first to implement that into runs. I use it in the next segment too, you'll see. I'll do it a lot better in the next segment, I promise. You might notice also at the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see my PB graph. That just compares how far ahead, or rather behind in this case I am, from world record / PB. And you can actually see the world record playing in the upper right corner of the screen as well, as a personal best comparison. So you have those tools, just like if something out of the ordinary happens, you can just look up there and a lot of the time see what should have happened. That tends to happen because the world record in this game is pretty optimized. I say pretty optimized and not extremely optimized anymore because a huge skip was found a few days ago that saves a lot of time. So I can't say it's extremely optimized anymore, but it will be once I update my times a lot more. But yeah, other than that new trick, this time that I have is very, very good. It's very optimized. It takes thousands of hours to get to this point in this game. Thousands of hours of practice and dedication.
The robot better change tactics and fast.
Yeah, this is another area where we might want to set some time aside for donation reading, I'd say. Phase 1 is pretty simple. Just wait for him to stop spinning and bowl him in the back on the kick me here sign. Phases 2 and 3 are pretty difficult though, and I'd like to explain how they work coming up next.
What is Sandy going to do to get SpongeBob?
So this is phase 2 of the boss fight. He's gonna spin around and shoot his goo at me. I'm just gonna do the swing stalling tech up here so he can't hit me while simultaneously dropping these boxes. Grabbing onto these swingers allows boxes to fall from the sky depending on where RoboPat is positioned. So that time he was positioned in the back, so when he's positioned back there, he can just turn around immediately and grab that lever. If he's positioned in the front, however, that just causes him to turn all the way around to grab it. So it's preferable for him to land in the back. However, it's harder when he lands in the back because you have to be able to read him and pull down boxes in time to hit him. So that was a pretty bad read.
The robot's made himself dizzy. That's the ticket.
But it makes up for itself because he spawned in the back.
One more douse
Or
with
landed in
that
the back,
stuff,
rather.
And SpongeBob will be back in the ring. Oh, that was a doozy.
So coming up after this, we're just gonna do the same thing here. Phase 3 will come. And by the way, when I damage myself after he does this whole spin cycle thing, that is done. Oh, I could have gotten a really good prediction off of that, but best not be risky in a marathon.
SpongeBob is back in the fight.
So the reason why I do that interruption there is because he has this vomit cycle that goes around the entire ring, and it's very, very slow. It's a lot faster just hitting him, letting him hit you, rather. If you let him hit you early, he'll taunt you, and then he'll go back to doing his thing, so it's faster, and it looks a lot less gross, to be perfectly honest. So what I just did there was an AI manipulation that causes him to land. Hopefully, yeah, so he's going to land on this side. Sometimes he'll throw curveballs where he lands on the side you don't expect, and you lose a lot of time from it. Pretty bad element for a speed run, but you know, for all the good qualities this game has, this is a very small price to pay for how good the speed run is and how little of RNG there is. This boss isn't RNG, it's just very inconsistent, that's all. It's not literal RNG. But yeah, it's sometimes it's pretty tough to call where this guy's gonna land. This is very dangerous. Wow, I can't believe he landed back there. Okay. I can't believe this isn't hitting. What? Okay. Alright. So now we have the cruise bubble attack. Paired with our bubble bowl attack, we can use these moves on the same frame twice. That's pretty much the basic idea of cruise boosting. Cruise boosting boosts your base speed, so when you're standing, you're still moving. It's a pretty unique, rather it is a unique trick in speedrunning in my opinion. I haven't seen anything like it before. So right now, it doesn't make my running speed faster, it makes my standing speed faster. So when I run, it stacks onto my standing speed. And you'll see that in a bit. I'll be standing still and I will still be moving. But I'm just capturing the sliding momentum from brushing against the wall. Doing it on the same frame allows you to capture the speed. So those are two frame perfect inputs there that cause the speed to boost. There are two, or three rather, typical ways that we use cruise boosting in this run. We have normal cruise boosting, reverse cruise boosting, and cruise canceling. So cruise RCB, or reverse cruise boosting, you'll see here now. Hopefully. That's a reverse cruise boost. The utility of that is using the camera to manipulate your position the way you're facing, to cancel the second cruise bubble animation off the side of whatever object you're using. And I got the camera locked, nice. That's going to push me a little bit closer to my destination. In some cases it does though. Yeah, typically, and so you'll see here I'm standing still but I'm still moving. We do that there because those tikis hide from you when you're moving, so if we're standing still and the game's pushing me, the game doesn't detect that I'm moving, so I can just stand on top of those things without scaring them away. This is a very movement-intensive area of the speedrun here. It's a very good example of how being able to move whilst not moving, actually, it doesn't make sense, right? It sounds weird. Being pushed while you're not moving anything shows you how you can string together these moves that weren't previously useful strung together, like the Viking helmet move. And I can't believe that just missed. Okay. The Viking helmet move and the bubble feet move. You can string those together to do a bunch of combos, kind of like rolling out and diving in Mario games. It makes the movement a lot faster and more fluent when you get toward this end area of the speedrun. That's why I said it's all downhill from here. But as I was saying before, the camera lock thing I was talking about, you'll notice that when I have a cruise boost and the game zooms in to focus on me. Here it didn't because I have an object in the way, which is the toll gate. But when there's no object blocking me, you'll see the camera zoom in and the camera will pan in to focus on me. But if I have a cruise boost, because I'm moving at all times, the game forces me to spin in a circle. And the spinning in a circle forces me to stay within the camera's range. Just a weird thing. I'll show you again later when it happens. But yeah, what I just did there is called Sleepy Skip. It's another one of those damage boosts. We rub against a ledge and get extra frames. That trick used to be frame perfect, but a setup was since found that only loses 0.9 seconds. So that's not even 1 second. But it's not frame perfect anymore, so it's a lot more consistent, and some players have actually adopted it because it's gotten a lot easier. But of course, with easy tricks, harder tricks get found, and the game gets faster. There's always that balance. Now I'm going to show you how to skip a boss fight in this game. Oh, well, I went to the wrong area. Okay, that's interesting. Didn't even notice that. So I'm going to clip out of bounds here using a technique called L clipping. I use the cruise bubble to push me out of the map. And we're going to use that again in the next area. What I did there was I touched the trigger that activates the cutscene for the ending of the boss fight. So the game thinks that I already beat it, and then the boss fight is therefore completed. And we use that again later in the run, and that bowling shot just missed. Okay. Well, we're going to use another L clip here. This is the new trick that I was talking about that saves a lot of time in the speedrun. It's a very new trick. It was only found a few days ago. Theorized for 4 to 5 years, finally done RTA. And as of today, it's in the world record. So I'm going to clip into this ball here. I'm going to roll it on over and use an L clip to go through this glass case. Alright, there we go. That was pretty decent, except for the bowling shot miss. It's going to get a lot more optimized because that was only found a few days ago. That segment's going to get way faster. That invisible button is going to unlock this other area over here. And you can that ledge grab was not supposed to happen. You can see on my right, those floats came up. I just hit a button that has an active hitbox despite not being paid for yet to bring that spatula out of the water along with the floaties. This is one of the more movement-intensive areas of the game. This is called Save the Children Spatula, or just Kids for short. In this mission, we have to pop all the balloons to save the kids, which is kind of ironic because by popping the balloons, they fall in the water, or goo rather, and wouldn't that mean they're in danger? I mean, they have floaties, I guess, but do they even have floaties? I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah, it's a very strict cycle. If you miss that cruise boost on that box, you'll end up losing up to 20 seconds from missing the cycle. So here we are in downtown Bikini Bottom again. All we have to do here is just collect this spatula that we get from coming back with the cruise bubble and using it on that button. People have actually tried to go out of bounds in the early game and get the spatula with Sandy by clipping out and hovering to it. But unfortunately, the game programmed, the developers programmed this button to only work if you hit it with a cruise bubble, which isn't the case for a lot of buttons in the game, so it's pretty unfortunate. Alright. So now we're going to continue on Jellyfish Fields where we left off before by jumping out of bounds. And by doing this, we're going to skip the entire Jellyfish Caves level and just run straight through the level. Right under the map. So yeah, you can see all the parts of the level you should not see. All the winding tubes, which should be the caves. We're going to clip back in now and move on. It's a pretty precise jump there called Rock Skip. That was actually featured in the previous GDQ that I ran in. It's been around for a while, that trick. Here, though, is where the routing pays off for the new trick that was found recently. So, the last time this game was in GDQ, we had to go through this whole process of breaking those fountains, like the one I just jumped on as Patrick, and it interrupts the whole run, because you have to go through a loading screen and a cutscene, and it's just very slow and boring. So, because the Ballroom clip was found, we can use that spatula to replace this spatula, and just skip that whole thing and go right through this level. That's why my split's called See Ya, because we're no longer doing Drain the Lake as a spatula. And it makes this segment, which is arguably one of the best movement sections in the game, a lot more fun, and it doesn't interrupt anything. So I think it's really great that the community came together to help make that possible. So this is one of the few boss fights in this game, along with Robo Sandy and Robo Patrick, that can't be skipped with boss triggers. But it doesn't really matter because we can just use this cruise bubble to attack him before he can attack us anyway. This was intended to be the first mini-boss in the game, so they didn't expect us to come back with the cruise bubble. But yeah, how we know this exists, or rather, how do we know that the trigger doesn't exist for this boss fight or any other ones? Well, we know the triggers don't exist because I actually talked to one of the developers who worked on this game, and he informed me that the person who developed these three bosses is a different developer from the other. So that leads me to believe that, along with the fact that people looked in the game's code before to see if these triggers exist, that they don't exist at all, because the developers who worked on those boss fights were different than the ones who worked on the other ones. So I guess the ones who made this boss fight, and Sandy and Patrick, took the more efficient route and decided not to make the end of the fight a physical trigger in the game. Kind of strange, but you know, hey, it's a good thing that those triggers exist because it makes the game a lot more interesting. This is one of the biggest skips in the entire run here. This saves so much time. We're gonna completely skip the entire Kelp Forest and do the whole thing backward. Pretty similar to Goo Lagoon, but all we do is just do this and enter this area through the back. And that's it. And now we're going to collect 6 spatulas in the span of 2.5 minutes. This is the most fast-paced area of the run in terms of spatula collection. It's pretty crazy. So now that we entered this again with the box properties, I can enter the second box and go to the first one because the second one's unlocked and it automatically unlocks the first one. What I did there is I touched the trigger to start that time challenge, jumped into the box, touched the end trigger, and so we skipped the entire time challenge with that, with the Kelp Forest slide, which again saves a lot of time. Now we're going to enter through the back of the Kelp Caves, so no lame puzzles, no running around with tikis and switching bus stops and pressing buttons. None of that. We're just going to skip the whole thing and use more spatula warp abuse to skip to the beginning of the caves and just walk backward and continue on our journey. The Kelp Caves, interestingly, is in my opinion the most broken area of the entire game, especially in the 100% category. That level is busted. You can clip through pretty much everything in there. You can collect every power crystal and spatula in that level without opening a single gate. And if you play the game casually, that probably just blew your mind that I just said that. Because you probably spent so much time as a child, like, trying to get through the caves, and it's all dark, and pressing those buttons, and solving the puzzles with the tikis. You don't have to do any of that. So I recommend, if you're interested in seeing how broken that level is, you can check out a 100% speedrun of this game, or an all major tasks speedrun. That works too. All major tasks is pretty much a shorter version of 100% with no socks and no shiny object grinding. Well, there's a little bit, but it's only about a minute long. It's nothing. Now we're going to go to one of the most movement-intensive levels in the entire game, Squid's Dream. You noticed earlier we got the mission warp to here, and then we left immediately because we needed to have cruise boosting to return here and backtrack for a really fast spatula. But yeah, we just... there was sequence breaking all over the place just there. This level is extremely fast-paced, and the next level has what is notoriously the biggest run killer for world record paced runs, and that is the infamous Fast Nut, a one-frame slide bash that sends you across the sandy dreamscape and skips the entire Texas slide level, which saves a lot of time. But this method is an optimization. There is a slower strat that is way more consistent for runs. And first try in a marathon setting. Nice. Let's go. Let's go. Man, that is hard to do. That is a really, really hard trick to stay consistent with. Wow. Alright, let's continue on. Do another taxi skip here, collect some of our final socks. Need 20 more socks to trade into Patrick, and we're good to go. We have ourselves a run.
The grave.
Dutchman's graveyard, much like Rock Bottom, is one of the most movement-intensive areas in the entire game. I say Dutchman's and Rock Bottom. As far as consistently difficult movement goes, they are the two hardest levels to master. Yes, Dream does have the most difficult tricks, but a lot of those tricks are absolute, where if you get them, you save the time. If you miss them, you lose a lot of time. But these levels, like the Dutchman's Graveyard and Rock Bottom, have very tiny optimizations that are very easy to mess up and lose residual time over. So optimizing these segments and staying consistent within a few seconds of them is very difficult. Whereas with Dream, if you get the trick, you get it. If you miss the trick, you miss it. You'll either be plus 20 or you'll be even with what you had before. So a lot of room for improvement here. It's a very high skill ceiling. Very, very high skill ceiling. You can tell a lot about a player by the quality of their Dutchman split. I used to say that a lot. How good their movement is determined a lot by that. I'm going to do a new skip here, actually. It's something that I found recently that is theorized for a long time. Alright, well, I'm actually not going to do that then, because I missed it. I'm going to do the old strat instead. But there is a new strat where you can go and boost outside of that boat. You can go up and around the ship instead of going inside of it, and it saves a few seconds. It's really cool looking. Now we have to activate the Dutchman's cannons. So the objective of this mission is, well, casually speaking, get these cannons ready to fire to take out the robot ship. And the button in that chest should activate the cannons to make them fire at the robots. Now, the robots had their defense cannons, which we haven't destroyed yet. So, when I hit this button, we're going to get a cutscene that shows the cannons firing. And in order to unlock the final fight in this world, we need to destroy the robot ship. However, we haven't done that successfully because these cannons are still there. So we have to go over and destroy them according to what the game wants. But what if I told you that there was a huge oversight in this level where the developers forgot to... Pretty much what they did is they let this level unlock by pressing that button. Even though you didn't destroy the robot cannon, so we can just skip destroying those and go right to the final fight. So that was the Dutchman boss fight skip. And that's another level where there are a lot of different strats and a lot of different skill levels, which make it a lot more difficult and a lot faster, depending on how much you want to take on. But what you just saw there was the most optimal way of doing that. That's the optimal strat that you just watched there. It's quite difficult to pull off.
They serve food here, yes, but they don't serve love.
Alright, so we're headed into the final fight. Again, same thing as a Dutchman skip, you'll see here.
And here we are, folks, the main event.
We're going to do a very similar exploit to skip this boss fight.
The
Here we go.
robot better change tactics and fast.
And I missed it. I can't believe I missed that skip. This is one of my most consistent skips in the game. It's unfortunate. That just cost me the 57. Oh well. That's kind of funny that I missed it. I never missed that.
Neutralize the giant robot's brain? Oh, that was a doozy.
Alright. So we just skipped the entire second phase of the boss fight as well. And when I hit the third fuse, that'll be time. Kind of unfortunate that I missed Robot SpongeBob skip, because this might have had potential to be a 57. Actually, I guess not. Would have been close though. Anyway, not, you know, it was okay for a marathon run. I got all the hardest tricks first try. I just missed a bunch of the easy things somehow. It's quite difficult to narrate while doing this speed run. A lot of these tricks require a lot of focus. Yeah, thank you for watching. This was my BFBB any % submission for SGDQ 2018. Thank you for watching. If this is your first time watching a run of this game, I think it's pretty cool that you got to experience the commentary and get to understand a lot of this run more, because a lot of this stuff is very confusing to start off. I remember when I first started running this game, none of this made sense, and the game's only gotten more complex and crazier since I started running it, so I can only imagine what some of you guys are thinking when you watch these runs without me explaining it. But yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who learned something today, so I'm happy about that. I'm glad that I got to show off the Ballroom skip. I think it's awesome that that was found after so many years of trying to make it work. A lot of people contributed to it, and it's a huge milestone for the community. Speaking of the community, we have over 200 runners now for this game, which is pretty crazy. A lot of activity on the leaderboards, A lot of very good players in the top 10. So it's definitely breaking into the mainstream, I'd say, for speedrunning. It's come a long way. And part of that, I'd say, is due to its first appearance in GDQ. You guys gave me a chance to show this game off and prove that it's worth watching and playing for yourself. So thank you for that, and I hope to see you again, hopefully soon. This game's improved a lot in the past year or so. It's improved by almost 3 minutes in potential, and I think that's worth seeing at least a second time with some improved strats and even crazier movement. So thanks, guys. This has been my submission, and I'll hopefully see you there.